Shlomo Hillel, the spy, the statesman, and the man who emptied Babylon. Some Jewish heroes enter history with manifestos, rifles, poetry, and fire. Others enter with forged papers, false names, bribed officials, and the quiet discipline required to move an ancient people out of danger. Shlomo Hillel belonged to the second kind. He was not Avraham Stern. He was not the poet of Jewish rebellion or the symbol of underground defiance. Hillel's courage was different, less dramatic, less combustible, more practical. He was a man of routes, documents, negotiations, disguises, and rescue. If Stern forces us to confront the fire of Jewish resistance, Hillel forces us to confront something the world still prefers to ignore. Jewish rescue was not an idea, it was work. Dangerous work, patient work, secret work. And sometimes it required a Jewish man from Baghdad to return to Baghdad pretending to be someone else. Shlomo Hillel was born in Baghdad in 1923, the youngest of 11 children in a middle-class Jewish family. That detail matters because Baghdad was not incidental to Jewish history. It was Babylon. The Jews of Iraq were not recent arrivals. They were not Europeans passing through. They were one of the oldest Jewish communities on earth. Their roots reached back more than 2,500 years to the Babylonian exile. They built schools, synagogues, businesses, traditions, and scholarship. They helped shape the civilization of Jewish exile itself. When Jews speak of Babylon, we are not borrowing someone else's history. We are opening family files. Hillel's family left Iraq in the 1930s after his father saw the direction the country was taking. The 1933 Simele massacre, in which Iraqi forces slaughtered Assyrian Christians, left a clear impression. If the state could do that to one minority, Jews understood what could come next. That was not paranoia, it was historical literacy. By 1941, the warning became reality. The Farhud erupted in Baghdad. Jewish homes were attacked, Jewish businesses were looted, Jews were murdered in the streets. The idea that Jewish life in Arab lands was peaceful until Zionism somehow ruined everything is one of the great convenient myths of modern discourse. The truth is more difficult. Jewish life in Iraq was ancient, rich, and deeply rooted. It was also increasingly unsafe. That is not a contradiction. That is Jewish history in one sentence. Hillel reached the land of Israel as a child and studied at Herzliya Gymnasium in Tel Aviv. He joined the Haganah. Before he rescued Jews from Iraq, he helped build the machinery of Jewish self-defense. He was connected to the Ayalon Institute, the secret underground bullet factory hidden beneath a kibbutz near Rehovot. While the British were still in control, young Jews worked below ground producing ammunition for the future War of Independence. It was the same lesson in another form. Jewish survival required preparation, secrecy, and nerve. Then came Iraq. Hillel did not merely remember the Jews he had left behind. He went back for them. That is the sentence that should stop us. He escaped, and then he returned, not as a visitor, as an undercover Zionist operative. Among Iraqi Jews, he was known as Shammai. Among Arabs, Amu Yusuf. Later, for one of his most daring missions, he became Richard Armstrong, a pipe-smoking British businessman with a carefully constructed backstory. The disguises were not theater, they were survival. In 1946, Hillel returned to Baghdad using an Iraqi passport and worked with the Zionist underground. At the time, Jews trying to leave Iraq depended on dangerous overland routes, smugglers, bribed officials, and luck. Hillel helped create something bolder, an air rescue. It became known as Operation Michaelberg. American pilots flew a C-46 transport plane into Iraq. 50 Jews hid near Baghdad airport, cut through a fence, and rushed aboard during the narrow window before takeoff. The plane later landed in the Galilee, guided by a bonfire near Yavniel. It sounds impossible only because we have forgotten how desperate and inventive Jewish rescue often had to be. A young Iraqi-born Jew helped smuggle Jews by air into the Jewish homeland before the Jewish state even existed. That is not colonialism, that is a people refusing to remain trapped. Operation Michaelberg was only the beginning. After Israel declared independence, the position of Iraqi Jews became worse. Arrests, intimidation, restrictions, and confiscations turned an ancient community into a population looking for a way out. Hillel helped create escape routes through Iran. Refugees crossed borders and waited for the next leg of the journey. At one point, they waited in an old Jewish cemetery in Tehran, a cemetery. Jews fleeing death, waiting among the dead so they could reach Jewish life. That image carries more truth than any slogan. In March 1950, Iraq passed a law allowing Jews to leave if they renounced their citizenship. The government expected a limited number of Jews to register, perhaps a few thousand. Instead, more than 100,000 did. That is what happens when a government accidentally gives fear a form. Jews understood what was happening. Citizenship could be surrendered. Property could be lost. Homes could be abandoned. But life had to be saved. Hillel returned again, this time under the identity of Richard Armstrong. He negotiated with Iraqi officials to arrange the flights that would carry Jews out. In one extraordinary episode, he sat in meetings while people who might have known him failed to recognize him. There was also the scar. Hillel had a mark on his cheek from leishmaniasis, known locally as the Rose of Baghdad. During a dinner, Arab guests noticed it and questioned him. He improvised a story about being wounded while fighting Germans. Soon afterward, Iraqi secret police reportedly received a tip that Armstrong was Jewish. Hillel left the next day. History sometimes turns on such details: a scar, a lie told quickly, a departure made in time. The Great Airlift became publicly known as Operation Ezra and Nehemiah, named for the biblical leaders who helped return Jews from Babylonian exile to Judea. But Hillel himself preferred another name, Operation Babylon. That name is sharper. It says exactly what happened. Babylon was emptied. After the March 1950 law opened a temporary exit door, the Great Airlift followed in 1951 and 1952, carrying roughly 120,000 to 130,000 Iraqi Jews to Israel. An ancient Jewish civilization rose into the sky. We speak often about refugees in the Middle East. We should. But the nearly 1 million Jews expelled, pressured, or frightened out of Arab and Muslim lands are too often treated as a footnote. They were not a footnote. They were Jews from Baghdad, Cairo, Damascus, Aleppo, Tripoli, Sana'a, Tehran, Fez, and beyond. They had homes, businesses, synagogues, cemeteries, recipes, songs, dialects, family histories, and lives. Then they became refugees. Israel, poor, young, exhausted, surrounded, and still absorbing Holocaust survivors, took them in. Not perfectly, never perfectly, but Israel took them in because Jewish sovereignty means Jewish responsibility. Not just flags, not speeches, responsibility. The Jewish state was not born because Jews wanted a political symbol. It was born because Jewish history had taught us what happens when our survival depends on someone else's permission. Shlomo Hillel knew that. He did not wait for the world to become kind. He moved Jews. That should be engraved somewhere. He moved Jews, from danger to safety, from exile to sovereignty, from Babylon back into the living Jewish story. His life did not end in the shadows. Hillel became a diplomat, ambassador to African countries, a member of Knesset, minister of police, minister of interior, and eventually speaker of the Knesset. In 1988, he received the Israel Prize. As interior minister, he signed the ordinance applying the law of return to Ethiopian Jews, helping open the legal door for another ancient Jewish community to come home. That detail matters. Babylon, Ethiopia, ancient exiles, modern statecraft. Hillel understood that Zionism was not an Ashkenazi story with palm trees. It was the gathering of a scattered people from every direction history had thrown us. This is why his life is so dangerous to anti-Zionist mythology. He was born in Baghdad. He rescued Jews from Baghdad. He helped bring Babylonian Jews to Israel. That cannot be made to fit the lazy slogan that Israel is a European colonial project. Mizrahi Jews break that story. Iraqi Jews break that story. Yemenite Jews, Moroccan Jews, Syrian Jews, Egyptian Jews, Libyan Jews, Iranian Jews all break that story. Anti-Zionism needs those Jews erased because their existence proves the Jewish story in the Middle East is not foreign. It is indigenous, ancient, and continuous. The lie says Jews are strangers to the Middle East. Hillel answers from Baghdad. The lie says Zionism was only European. Hillel answers with Babylon. The lie says Jewish sovereignty is aggression. Hillel answers with rescue. But honest history requires more than praise. Hillel also became part of Israel's establishment, and that establishment did not always treat Mizrahi Jews with the dignity they deserved. He was one of the few Mizrahi Jews to rise into senior leadership. But his position also placed him inside a system many Mizrahi activists challenged. As Minister of Police in the early 1970s, he oversaw the police during the rise of the Israeli Black Panthers, the Mizrahi protest movement against discrimination and inequality. Some activists saw him not as their representative, but as part of the establishment they opposed. That must be said, not to diminish him, to tell the truth. Jewish history is not a birthday card. It is argument, memory, gratitude, criticism, and obligation all at once. Hillel was both a rescuer of Mizrahi Jews and a member of an establishment many Mizrahi Jews criticized. He was both a symbol of possibility and part of a system that still needed repair. That tension does not weaken the story, it makes it real. There is a kind of Jewish courage that looks dramatic from the outside: the fighter, the poet, the rebel, the man with the pistol and the manifesto. And there is another kind, the man who learns the system well enough to beat it, the man who wears another name so thousands can keep theirs, the man who sits across from officials who might imprison him and calmly negotiates the exit of an entire people. That was Shlomo Hillel, not fire, a key, not thunder, a route, not a slogan, a way out. His story matters now because Jewish history is once again being flattened into propaganda. Jews are allowed to be victims, provided we stay powerless. We are allowed to be mourned, but not sovereign, remembered, but not armed, studied, but not believed. Shlomo Hillel ruins that script. He reminds us that Jewish survival was not passive. We did not return to history on sympathy. We returned through farms, schools, ships, safe houses, planes, diplomats, smugglers, forged identities, bad paperwork, worse bureaucracy, and people brave enough to do what respectable people said was impossible. Yair Stern gave Jewish defiance a flame. Shlomo Hillel gave Jewish rescue a flight plan. Both are part of the story. One burns, one carries. And if we are mature enough to inherit a state, we must be mature enough to inherit all of it. The poets, the spies, the refugees, the ministers, the mistakes, the miracles, the arguments, the luggage, the graves left behind, and the children who stepped off planes into a country still learning how to become home. Shlomo Hillel did not save an idea, he saved people. And in Jewish history, that is never just biography. That is covenant in motion. Am Yisrael Chai does not mean exile was gentle. It means exile failed, again, and we are still here to tell the story. If you enjoy my writing, support me by buying my book, Screaming into the Void, available on paperback or Kindle on Amazon.com.